Welcome back to the channel. I want to continue looking at Black Myth Wukong. If you've checked out my previous video, it was looking at the RTX 3080 and the settings that you can anticipate running if you want to play Black Myth Wukong. I would like to take a look at the 3090 that I have as well, and maybe you're in the same situation. You've got older generation cards, you'd like to play something a little bit more current, and what types of settings can you anticipate? Well, looking at the minimum system requirements and the recommended system requirements, they're listed for you there. Look at your GPU settings. Is that an RTX 2060, Radeon RX 5700 XT, or the Intel Arc A750? So if your recommended settings are RTX 2060 and you've got a 3090, yes, you can play the game. But what types of quality can you expect? Well, when I'm looking at the systems, I'm not just using one system. I'm looking at multiple to see if the system settings have any impact on the quality of the graphics we can achieve with this GPU. So at first we've got the Test Bench V2, and that's a i9 14900KF. All these systems are very similar, and you're going to see that from your FPS ratings. The KF has 32 gig of memory. And then I had a Penthouse system. You following along, you know these naming conventions. Just sort of sticking with them at this point. The 14900K, also a K system with 32 gig, a little faster transfer memory. So I realized I need to differentiate, and wondering if a K with 64 gig, which is now the same Penthouse system number 3, I just swapped out to, I purchased another set of memory and moved that to a 64 gig system to see if that would have a difference of impact in your frame rates and gameplay. And then looking at system 4, the SimRig, and that's got an i9 14900KS with 64 gig of memory. So the only difference is not a memory size difference, but the processor is a little bit faster processor with the 6.2 boost instead of the 6 gigahertz. And then the Office Rig, which is my best setup, which is also a KS, but 96 gig of memory. Does any of these systems play an impact when you plug a 3090 into it? They all have the same undervolt vidlock. The coolers are all similar. All of these, I've got temperature data, but that's not necessary. These systems run great. Go back and check my Intel i9 Keep It Cool series, where I've done extensive testing on these if you want to learn more about these systems. Okay, let's talk about what we're expecting to see and the way I wanted to recommend my settings. So you want to have at least 60 frames per second, but I think you need a little bit more than that. You need a little bit more padding, so when the frame rate or the action gets a little busy, you've got some dips in your frame rate, and you don't want lag, you don't want a bunch of delays. So it's best to have about 80 frames per second. That's my opinion. Subject to popular belief, right? Some people say you want over 100, but I think at least if you have 80 frames per second or more, you've got a little bit of a buffer there. But again, it's subjective. This will help get you started in the right direction. So looking at the 3090 and 1080p, these are the systems that I ran through the setup, and you can see that it didn't. The system settings didn't really have a major impact on your frame rates. They're all about the same, even running all the same graphic settings. So 1080p, high settings, and then DLSS quality at 65%. No frame gen, no ray tracing. It's not an option here in the 30 series, right? Not until you get up into the 40 series, and 50 series had the 4-time frame gen. You have good numbers here. They're all over 100. So I think that's really a good option. Let's take a look at 1440, and it is still running at high settings. You had high settings at 1080p. You have high settings at 1440p, all in the same systems. Now your frame rates drop from 100 to in the 90s, but you do have mins and maxes that are reasonable. That 20 is an outlier, obviously. There was a little blip during the benchmark, but for the most part, you see mid-60s to low 100s for your range, with the average sticking around about 90. So that's really a good option for 1440p. I'm a fan of 1440p gaming. I think that's your sweet spot there. But do you want to try 4K with this particular card? So with the 3090, can you do it? Yes, you can do it. And you can even stick with the high settings, but you drop your DLSS to performance. So that's the compromise that I made there, keeping with the high, dropping to performance, but you see that you're really knocking at the door of that 80. So and then there's that outlier again. So you've got mid 60s mins and mid 90s max. You might need to drop to medium settings or keep decreasing your DLSS settings just to give you a little bit buffer there. I think this is a good place to start if you want to try 4K. I think overall you've got a very playable and enjoyable experience with the 3090. Sticking with the 1080p or the 1440p, I really think that's your best bet in terms of getting the most out of the graphics card and the best gameplay. But if you really are a diehard 4K player, it's still a reasonable option. Yes, even with the 30 series flagship card, you can run 4K relatively well with this particular game. The video that's been playing was running 4K. So with that, I think enjoy the game. You can have a good experience with a 3090. There's more to come. We're going to be looking at maybe a 50 series card with this soon. So enjoy the game. God bless.